First and foremost, welcome to the 2020 JOC Conference Annual Members Meeting, and also for those who attended the job certificate class course next door. With that being said, again, my name is Joe Alvarez. I'm here as the owner representation for the Houston Airport Systems, Houston, Texas. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. So I'll use my sailor analysis. If that's the bow, go to the starboard. But if that doesn't work, go that way. That's the easiest thing, right? Go that way. That's the safe way to go. Thank you all for being here. For those of you who don't know, I'm Mike Beavis. I introduced myself now to both groups at least once, but hopefully you'll remember that. Or forget it. It doesn't matter. It's up to you. So one thing I'd like to do, and we'll do this in a couple of sections, so don't feel left out if I don't announce right away, but I'd like to recognize a couple of our sponsors now. So who's here from Sourcewell? Could you please stand? Yeah, could you guys stand up for a second? So Sourcewell is our platinum sponsor. We are appreciative because they are what hold the price down and they're what help us do the things we do. Also, SDB Contracting. Are you guys? SDB. So they're out working right now. So they're actually sponsoring the drinks later. So be grateful when you see them. Okay, and FH Passion, we got, is he here? Anybody? No. Yeah. So they're sponsoring breakfast tomorrow. So don't be late tomorrow because there's breakfast, right? Food's there, it's ready for you. It's going to be great. Let's see, what else should we do? We'll talk about scholarships when we get to stuff later, and we'll talk about our scholarship sponsors. So any questions about housekeeping? Any questions about process? So as we go through today, we'll have a couple of presentations. We'll have a couple of panels. We'll have several things going on. If you look in your program, right, the schedule starts on the third page. We're following that schedule. We're right on time. And we've also got the layout of the trade show, which is right next door in there, so you can do that. And what we're going to do now is start our first panel. So if we could get our moderators, which are Hanif and Jason, and we'll introduce the panel as we do the panel, and we'll get started with JOC Across America and Owners panel. So think about questions you might have for a group of owners who've been around for a while. We're going to have some questions we're going to seed things with, and let's get started. There we go.
Okay. Yeah. Good morning. My name is Jason. I'm with TMG Construction. We're based out of Virginia. We're a JOC contractor. Personally, I've been involved with CJE for a couple years now. I'm on the board of our Mid-Atlantic chapter and also on the board of the national organization and the committee chair. So just a quick show of hands, how many people are on the contractor side here? Okay, and then owner side? And then other? Okay, all right, so this should be really applicable, I think, for everyone here. We've got a lot of good representation from owners across America. So if you're on the owner side, you can see how other states, other jurisdictions are handling and doing JOC in their areas. And if you're a contractor interested in possibly expanding or just curious about JOC, you can see how it's done in other markets other than the one in which you're currently working, or perhaps some of your customers are up here. So again, looking forward to what you all have to say. Anyways, Hanif?
Thank you, Jason. My name is Hanif Drizzle. I'm Director of Operation for a multidisciplinary engineering firm in Reston, Virginia. So I've been on different sides of the equation, I guess. Currently on the other side. Before I was on the owner side. So I'm currently serving as the Mid-Atlantic chapter president, and I'm ready to step down, and Jason will actually be the next president. So we're tag teaming this. So welcome, everybody. Thank you. So we're going to start our panel discussion. So we'd just like to introduce the panel. So if each of you could introduce yourself from one end to the other. I think we'll start from Mike here. This is Mike Beavis, and I'll let him give us 3 minutes.
Okay, so they've told me 6 times I only have 3 minutes.
Yes.
So I'll try to stay within 10. So my name is Mike Beavis. I'm Chief Procurement Officer for the city of Norfolk, Virginia. I've done JOCs in Chicago and Northern Illinois and Northern Virginia, and now working on programs in Tidewater, Virginia. We've awarded in my career probably around $700 million worth of JOCs. Now that's only local government, so the number's small when you think about the feds, but in the world of local government, that's some money to spend over a time period. And I also get the opportunity to teach at several universities in their graduate programs, and I've been able to have some leadership roles in different organizations, including being the current chair of this organization. So that's me in less than 3 minutes.
You did it. Thank you.
3 minutes.
Or less.
Okay. Or less. Okay. Well, that's, as you all know, from last evening in the teaching, that may be a little hard for me. My name is Vincent Lamond. I'm formerly with the city of Austin. I've been in job order contracting now since, I guess, 1989. I've worked on both sides of the fence. I was a private contractor to start my career in job order contracting, and I kind of finished a couple days ago with being on the public sector side of the table. So I've had most of my experience goes from basically the Colorado all the way over to the Mid-Atlantic. So haven't had any opportunity to venture over to California yet for job order contracting purposes. Have visited, nice state to visit. But I have no idea how many contracts or projects and so forth that I've worked. That number is so gone from my memory. So if I have any knowledge I can give you, please take advantage of it while I'm here. If I have an opportunity to meet with you outside of the panel, please step up to me and just ask me whatever questions you need for any information that you want. Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Chuck Clark. I'm from Sandag in San Diego, California. Sandag stands for the San Diego Association of Governments, so we handle transportation planning and construction for all of San Diego County, including all 21 cities and the county. I've been in the construction industry for close to 40 years now in all kinds of different roles. JOC in California is fairly new compared to the rest of the country. We've only been doing it over there about 10 years now. I've managed a JOC program at Sandag for about 5 years now. So I'm a little bit newer to the industry than some of the rest of the folks up here, but I have a pretty good understanding of it at this point. So anyway.
My name is Dolores Moore, and I'm from the city of Kansas City, Missouri, and I have over 10 years experience in job order contracting. When we first started job order contracting a number of years ago, we have always heard about it, but then we didn't have a contract in place. So during that time, we decided to test it before we actually decided to do our own job order contract. And so, and from that, we decided to do our own. And from that point, I was the person who was instrumental in coordinating everything to implement the contract for the city of Kansas City, and I am the administrator. And I'm here, and I'm still learning because there was nobody there to help me or guide me. And so I'm glad to find CJE and some of the other panelists that that has been very good in helping me and guiding me to be where the city of Kansas City is in our program.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Phoenix. My name is Eric Froberg. I'm the city engineer for Phoenix, so I guess I'm the local guy here. So I don't have as much JOC experience as the rest of the panel here. I've been the city engineer for Phoenix for about a year now, or just over a year. Prior to that, I was a consultant for 20 years, so I was more on the design side. But I do have a lot of experience with design and construction. The city of Phoenix has been doing JOC for quite a while. Our first JOC was in 2001. And I suspect as we go through this, we'll give you more details about our program. But again, welcome to Phoenix.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, on to the hard questions. All right, so this is a multi-part question. First of all, what are the individual job order, and Mike, we'll start with you, and then if everyone else would please chime in, but what are the individual job order limits in your jurisdiction? And then what is the overall contract volume limit? And then if there's any other unique attributes to the program, please share those as well.
Virginia is very politically focused on people trying to protect small contractors from big contractors getting work, not realizing how JOC can facilitate the sub-relationship with the big contractors and make everyone successful. I'd much rather talk about Illinois, where we had no limits, and you could have your JOCs have any amount of contract value and have your JOCs have any size projects. Now, that said, we still had limits in our own contracts and in our own approval processes, but they weren't statutory. So it's a big deal. We're lobbying our state legislature all the time to try to get the Virginia rules changed so we have more flexibility. It's anytime, from my perspective, anytime the state tries to limit your ability to get the jobs done, it's a problem, right? So that's us.
Okay.
It's not even a college football season right now, and you're saying that. Well, the limitations I have in the state of Texas since I've been there are based around, for municipality rules specifically, are going to be those that are associated to up to $500,000 without having to go to a government entity to gain approval. The bigger restraints, though, for job order contracting for municipalities in the state of Texas has to do with the fact that they can only work on facilities. And I don't know if any of you have ever had the opportunity to work with a city, but the buildings are just one piece of the puzzle for the overall group. One of our biggest customers, or could be one of our biggest customers, is Parks and Recreation. And Parks and Recreation alone defines facilities as actually their parks. So there's actually quite a bit of controversy in the determination of what projects can actually be performed. We're even constrained by the fact that you can have a project, you can't do JOC inside of utilities, but yet you can actually do JOC projects on the buildings inside the utilities. So if it's an administration building, I can work on it. But if it's one of the septic ponds or something of that nature, you can't even touch it. So at the state level or for higher education within Texas, the restriction is virtually none. It's almost self-imposed, which is, in my opinion, is truly the best way to handle it. Now, I would also refrain, though, from saying leave it wide open, because having done many proposals for $1 million projects, the number of line items is just a killer to have to put together. So I think you have to put some level of reasonability to it. So in my last couple stints and through the Texas area, I actually put in 300,000 as the limit that I put on it. And that was only just a base limit so that the contractors could actually perform have an idea of what they were actually proposing on when they put in the project themselves. As you probably saw, if you were in the class yesterday, you saw that I had a scattergram that was up on the wall, and I showed that, we've had projects that go up to the $1 million level, but it's very few. It's not really it's not the bread and butter of the JOC group in the Texas area. When I was in Virginia, though, I thought it was wonderful because the Richmond Housing Authority was quite wonderful for me for about 2-3 years as a contractor. As I stated, one of the big things there is that they just needed guidance on how to use the program. So as a contractor, I was able to actually promote a five-year growth plan for them using the JOC contract as a contractor. So it just depends on how ambitious, which side of it that you want to be on. And then in Missouri, we didn't have much in the way of limitations. And then I was truly blessed on any of the federal installations I worked. We had all design, and we had design all the way through construction, basically no limitation, and that we were able to take full advantage of. And kind of like to see some of that creep down into the municipality levels as you move through the organization.
Thank you. Well, I'm from California, the land of restrictions, so keep that in mind while I'm talking about this. So we award contracts that are ranging in total maximum size from $3 to $10 million. They're based on scope of work. But we can do a single JOC up to $2 million. The contracts are for about 3 years. We don't have restrictions on what type of work. We do all sorts of heavy civil projects, and we have done jobs that are over $2 million based on board approval, of course. But so we do all kinds of stuff over there. We use our JOC program for lots of different things: railroad, bus, roads, lots of different things, as well as some facility work. So we're like all over the map on actual size and scope. But we do have lots of other restrictions on us, of course, which we'll get into later, I suppose.
Well, the city of Kansas City, our volume is anywhere from $3 to $5 million, and our limit currently now is $500,000 on a project. However, when we first started our program, our limit was $250,000. And funny as this may sound, what I'm about to tell you is that when we first started our job order contracting program, it was the facility manager who said that, well, we really need to have a program as such. And with that, so once we got the program up and running, they did a few projects on it, but later after that, for some particular reason, they stepped back and they would not use the program that they said that they wanted to use. But now, however, we have a different facility manager, and it is being utilized throughout the city. And one of our biggest users is our water department. So we can do different projects under our program.
So sitting up here, listening to how the other agencies use it, make me appreciate the way that, and I guess the lack of limitations, that the city of Phoenix does, or the greater variability that we have. So JOC is a very important tool for us of delivering projects. So since 2001, and for the people that were in the class before, my predecessor gave a lot of the details about it. But since 2001, we've done over 7,000 projects and spent $1.3 billion through our JOC program. So that equates to about 60% of our projects, but only 10% of our budget. So we use it for these kind of smaller projects, the ones to get out. But when I say smaller, we just recently upped our JOA, so the individual project limits up to $4 million. So we do some more sizable type projects through the JOC, but through that JOC, we have, there isn't really a contract limit. So the overall JOC, some of them are $90 million, right? Where then you can do $4 million chunks. Kind of just depends on the department. Some of the smaller departments have smaller JOCs. Some of the bigger departments have bigger ones. But we've been able to utilize that to deliver projects for what ends up being the 5th largest city in the country. We don't have time to do a lot of the wait for some of the other delivery methods, so it allows us to get projects out a little more quickly. We do have one-step and two-step JOCs, so there are JOCs with price and without price, so we utilize those, as necessary through the things. And we also have multi-select, right? So we have 50 plus different disciplines covered by JOCs, different JOCs, and some of those have multiple contractors selected under those JOCs. So JOCs, that's the one that we probably can't live without here in Phoenix, at least for the city of Phoenix.
Okay, so the next question. I seem to be stuck with the question with a very limited time, so you're lucky, I guess. Yeah. So, next question is, please share your thoughts with an answer limit to 1 minute. Mike, do you think you could do that? Do you find the process work in terms of a streamlined solution to clear the backlog? I'll start.
So this was a tricky question to answer because it seems like, so the answer is yes. This does help us get projects out much more quickly, and having to go to to bid with low bids or design builds, CMARs, those types of things. It does help us. The part that tripped me up was clearing the backlog. We get projects out fast, but clearing the backlog never seems to happen. So it helps us to maintain a constant backlog.
Well, of course, yes. However, we always run into the problem where there is always a backlog of projects to do. And our issue that we have is the funding. Departments really don't have the money to be able to fund the projects. When they go out and for each year, when they do their planning, they do their planning based upon these are the projects that we want to do through our program. But then emergencies occur, and then, and so then here they go, they've been put on the back burner. So it is what it is. And so we just always, try to do our best.
Okay, so short answer, yes, of course. Our program is, by mandate, we have to do repairs and maintenance to existing facilities. So that means I'm not going out and building anything new out there, but we can go out and fix things. And that line gets a little fuzzy once in a while, but so backlog, I don't know about backlog, but yes, it definitely helps streamline the process.
I was at Fort Hood, and you want to talk about backlog. This is in the year 2000, basically, right before 2000. And one of the first work orders they gave me was from 1994, and they wanted my help removing a piece of hardware from a door. I got to the door and found out they just needed the key removed out of the lock. So I ended up getting a couple $100 for that little trade. But yeah, typically it is very good for streamlining the backlog and taking care of it. What I have noticed though, in most institutions, most public institutions, it's actually a problem trying to develop an idea of what that backlog is and trying to rack and stack that backlog in a manner that it can actually be pushed out the door in something. In my time with the city of Austin, I can honestly tell you I didn't get a hold of that backlog in my entire time there. With the University of Texas at Austin, I just started getting onto it, and we actually started moving hand in hand with the maintenance teams in order to start preparing the preventive maintenance program in association with the contracting.
Okay, so yes. So actually fast and backlog are these wonderful terms that I like to compare to computers, right? Because every computer I've ever had when it was new was really fast and amazing until lunch. And then it was slow. And then by the next day, I was tired of it screwing up, right? So it's never enough. And the backlog's always there, and it's never fast enough. But yes, it's faster, and yes, it's better. And yes, if it's used right, it will help you have a less critical backlog, maybe, is a better phrase to use. And I'll give a real fast example and still try to stay in the 2 minutes. When we did our first JOC in the city of Naperville in Illinois, we had a population of the city, which was the fire department, which was badly neglected because people weren't maintaining their buildings because they were not important, like City Hall or like the big rec centers or things like that. So they were just kind of ignored by the facilities people, not ignored, but never the priority. So what we were able to do with the JOC contractor was go to what were then the 11 fire stations and list and rack and stack, as you said, the needs that were there and compare it to the budget, and what the JOC contractor developed the priorities to get rid of that backlog. And the firefighters deserved to have functional bathrooms and working kitchens and roofs that didn't leak and things like that. But they were being, I don't want to say neglected, but they were being deprioritized. And by bringing in the extra resource, we were able to solve those problems. So it was really great in those ways.
Okay, so your JOC program, is it a single award or is it a multiple award? And if it is a multiple award, are the individual job orders awarded based off of performance, expertise, availability, a rotation, or some other means that we may not be aware of?
Okay, so our current JOCs are single awards, and they're not run the way I would like them to be in Norfolk, so we're fixing those. So I would say the way the process should be working is that they would be, if they are multiple awards, there'd be a priority structure whereby you're never competing price and never competing the work. You're always utilizing the firm that's performing. So they would be performance-based. And that's all I'm going to say, because I don't like the way they're currently working. But
Tidewater area is a little tough there, isn't
Yeah.
it? I've actually been a big proponent of multiple award. Single award contracts have a tendency to show a pitfall in the fact that if the contractor doesn't perform, you're now stuck. So that's one of those things you have to think about. Typically, the number that I've chosen for whenever I've established contracts is I've typically gone with 4 contractors, and I've wanted to make sure that I've had no lesser than about 20 million for a 5-year contract. If you can do more, that's great. The problem I have when you start going past the number of 4 is that you start having to work on the probabilities of what is truly fairness to the contractors and the amount of workload they have, because trying to maintain continuity of work is going to be the hardest thing that you have to do to try to prescribe work to more than 4 contractors at a time. We use a process, typically it's a modified rotation list. It's modified in the fact that we try to sort it out through first come, first serve, but at that same point, once we start gaining more institutional knowledge about your particular contracting firm and we start seeing relationships form, I have a tendency to modify that so that it's relevant to department usage or specific areas of usage. And then from there, it boils down to making sure that I manage the distribution of the dollars so that all contractors end the contract with the same dollar amount, as close as possible.
Okay, well, I wish I could do that. Again, going back to California. So unless it's a pure design build project, we can't hire contractors based on qualifications. It has to be a low bid situation. So we let our JOC contracts based on scope of work, like railroad work or electrical work or general civil work. Sorry, I have to eat the mic, right? And so the way we do that is we give them the Gordian book and say, here, we might give you work anywhere in the Gordian book. Bid, I know it sounds crazy. Bid us an adjustment factor based on those unit prices. So their adjustment factor is supposed to take into account their overhead and profit, right? And anything else that's not specifically covered by the unit prices. So we generally have 3, 5, 6 contractors under contract at any one time, and they're all based on a certain scope of work. And then when I award a JOC to one of them, it's based on the scope of work. And so we try to pretty much stick to that. Like I said, it can get fuzzy at times on scopes, especially if I don't like one of the contractors. Their scope doesn't seem to be used much. But that's the way we have to do things. It has to be low bid. So what else? Was that it? I think so.
Well, the City of Kansas City is a single award contract. Maybe eventually one day we will do one where there's multi-ones, but for right now, it's single and it's their performance.
City of Phoenix, for the most part, like we talked about, we have right now 150 or so active JOC contracts. Most of those, I would say, are probably multi-award. Some of the smaller, more specialized ones maybe are single, but most of them are multi-award. There isn't the rotation. As an ex-consultant, I try to, and now as the city engineer, I try to encourage departments to utilize all the JOCs equally, but part of the benefit of a JOC is the relationship that the JOC makes with the departments, and they understand, the JOC learns to understand what the departments really want. So I don't overrule people very often. If it's real bad, I'll make a suggestion, but no, generally it's based on performance and there isn't a set rotation.
This is just a quick follow-up question, mainly for Eric and Vincent for the multiple awards. Are they, for the master contract, are they typically awarded based off of low price for a factor or coefficient, or a best value award based off of the pricing, but also off of experience and other matters?
So most of our multi-award JOCs, or just most of our JOCs in general, are one step, so they're just based on qualifications. We're probably 80-20, where 80% of them are one step where there isn't a price component, and 20% of them where there is the unit book and we do a coefficient and those types of things. So we're kind of a hybrid of both. Most of them are just qualifications based.
I always use best value. I learned a long time ago as a contractor that doing low price with coefficients is what I used to nickname the ticket to the dance, because then I can get into the job and then stalemate with the owner until they agree to whatever profitability I wanted to have at that particular moment. The bigger part behind that has to do with being able to use a qualification system that allows us to see what the technical management team looks like that's going to be put on our job site, what their capabilities of handling, making sure they identify specialties that they may have in the areas that they work, and then taking either somewhere between a 49 to 30% calculation on the coefficient, just to make sure that the coefficient is a proper coefficient that actually meets the needs as we define what's supposed to be in a coefficient too as well. I think I answered that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you both. The next question is, the best feature of JOC and why, and this time, if you could share it in 2 minutes or less. I always have the time limits for some reason in this question, so.
Bleeding more time.
So the best feature from the agency standpoint is the quick turnaround and being able to deliver projects with already pre-qualified and high quality and pre-qualified contractors. So you don't have to necessarily have to have all of the details all the time. You just need to generally know what you need to do. You get a JOC on board, you work through the scope and fee, and when it's a one step, when it's a two step, they already have their fee there. But you work through the scope, and it's all about project delivery. This is our quickest way to get projects done. And when you have a backlog that never shrinks, this is the way to do it.
And I agree. The turnaround time is very important, and it works well for us. And getting back to the funding, departments have this list of projects that they must get done, but it always get back to funding. It's funding for us on these projects.
I like to, the best thing about it, of course, is that we can do things short-term, quick, get out there and get stuff done. I like to say we're the fire department, that when stuff breaks, we're there to fix it, right? And so we work with all the different agencies in San Diego County, including our operators, which is MTS and North County Transit District and Caltrans, and we have a toll road. We work with those folks. So instead of droning on anymore, I'm just going to give a quick example of a project we did, which I think identifies what's best about JOC and our program. So Interstate 15 in San Diego County has commuter lanes in the middle of the freeway that was built for many hundreds of millions of dollars. And those are for HOV vehicles, but they're also for people with a little transponder. They can pay their way on there, right? Like a toll road. So one night we had some brilliant criminals who decided to crawl up into an access hatch underneath one of the bridges on Interstate 15 and decided to rip a bunch of wires out that they saw hanging inside there, thinking that they were copper, which they weren't. They're fiber optic. But that took down the whole tolling system on Interstate 15, which, as you can imagine, is quite a lot of money per day. So within about 3 days, I had one of my contractors out there replacing all that cable that had been ripped out and saved the toll road and Caltrans and us a lot of money on it. So that, to me, is a great example of what's good about JOC.
Before my tenure in the city of Austin, I would have said speed. I would agree with almost everybody at this table, but since my tenure with Austin, it really boils down to volume, total volume presence that we can actually issue out at any given time. It is definitely the tool that helps get us the most construction going at any given moment.
So, yeah, D, which is all of those. But actually, I phrase it a little bit differently, and that is that the best thing about JOC is the opportunity to build a long-term partnering relationship with one or more contractors that allow things to go fast or to go effectively or to do backlogs or to do volume or to use budget or to do all those things, because you have to develop a trusted partner in order to do that. So from my perspective, what JOC does is what it was actually designed to do in the beginning, which was replace in-house forces to do the small to mid-sized stuff that's being neglected, right? But you have to have people you trust as much or more than your inside forces in order for that to work. So to me, it's about the partnership and the trust, and that defines as the quality of performance over time. And that's what makes it actually work. And all these other benefits are the articulation of that trust and that relationship that you can build. So for me, it goes that way.
Okay, so as far as having a successful JOC program, can you make some suggestions on best practices to follow, but also some pitfalls to avoid?
Okay, so
Don't do it like Virginia.
yeah. Avoid state laws that, well, at least make sure they don't change the laws after Vincent leaves, because that's what they did, right? So the pitfall is the advantage, and that's the part that to me is the hardest, and that is relationship management, and then that connects to personnel change. Because I've seen JOCs go bad because of a change in one side or the other's project management, either personnel or perspective. And then the relationship goes bad because literally the relationship goes bad, right? And then because people aren't agreeing on whatever level, they're starting to articulate that in late deliveries or change orders or this or that, or not showing up to scope a job or whatever it might be. So to me, whether you're on the owner side or on the contractor side, it's this idea of having transition plans and having depth of bench, or trying to develop it as best you can so that you can cover the changes that are inevitably going to come. I mean, people retire, people leave, people change, but to get continuity is important.
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and build on top of that. Basic pitfalls that I recognize for the owner's perspective, it's a bad contract. When you write the bad contract, basically all you're going to get is a reaction from the contractors that's equivalent to what you put on that piece of paper on the day of solicitation. So you need to make sure that it's informative, well-written, and that it does take into the mindset of the actual contractor when you're writing it, because they're your partner. They're the person you really want to have stay on board. Now, contractors, the side of the problem that's there is just what he stated. It's staffing. Making sure that you have proper staff there for the whole time, for the entire duration of it. The most successful companies I've watched on job sites are the ones that never change their job site team. And I know that's tough to do, especially since it's hard to grow a group of people in this JOC world, but I'll tell you, those are the teams that actually bring in the most profit. There's one thing, though, that is a lesson learned overall. It's the estimating. The estimating portion of JOC, no matter what, whether you use line item book or any other quality, it is truly becoming a departing skill at this point in time. And I'll tell you, if any of you could actually start reaching out and finding the younger generations and teaching them how to do estimating alone, I think you'll end up with one of your finest project managers that your company will have in your future. So,
Yeah, I agree with you completely there. It's one of the biggest pitfalls I see from the owner standpoint is not having people who really understand what it costs to build something. And that goes both ways, whether when it comes time to negotiate with your contractors, you got to really know what you're talking about. If you're just going in there blind, you got, some people that are inexperienced. It's tough to know whether you're getting the right number or not, right? And so that's, to me, is the biggest. I mean, the easy answer is, you get bad contractors. It's tough no matter what. And I can't change my laws, unfortunately. So I'm kind of stuck with those.
It's just hard.
Well, probably not by myself, but yeah, but I really think it's important to have good, solid people on the owner side that can really know what they're talking about. And I worked for contractors for 20 years, including I spent a lot of time as an estimator. So, I feel like that helps us in that way, at least.
For us is definitely having a good relationship. Having understanding the contract is very important. Understanding what we actually put in the contract ourselves, and also meeting with the contractors so they will understand our policies and procedures, and especially the process and how everything should be done. And far as personnel, is just having the right people on board that will understand the process and how it should work. At one time, we did have some issues with our contract where there were several of our main staffers with the owner, with the contractor that left. And then once the people start leaving, the end users department start calling, and they were concerned because are we going to get the same type of performance that we have been getting? Are they still going to have the same type of relationship that we had with the previous contractors? And there was some major concerns there. So building a relationship, and that's what was stated before, is that people go and new people come, people retire, but just getting those people trained that they can understand what both sides are doing.
So I thought about this question from two different standpoints. First, just from purely the contractual kind of procurement side of it, being that the Office of the City Engineer, we do all the procurement for a pretty large city, that the best practice that I'm trying to implement now, which is to get away from one of the pitfalls, is making sure that you're hiring the right amount of contractors for the right type of work. So the worst thing that could happen is, like they talked about before, is let's say you have a single award and then that contractor doesn't perform. Well, now you have to go out for another procurement, right? So, but if you have let's say a large paving project for your city and you need 5 contractors because it needs to get done a certain amount of time, hire the right amount of contractors, right? So that's a best practice from the contractual side, is making sure that you have the right contractors to spend the money and the time that you need it spent. But from the kind of JOC contractor relationship side, I think really focusing on the partnership and the relationship is important. And most important is just set clear expectations right up front. If the project managers and the JOC know exactly what needs to be done and what defines a successful project, when you get to the end, right, everyone understands what it takes to have a successful project. If right up front you set those expectations, it should move more smoothly through the process.
Thank you. So the next question, I think there's probably some of the answers that you already have, but I think there's maybe additional answers you can provide for us here. So how does the performance of JOC in terms of safety, quality, schedule, and budget rate when you compare it with other construction delivery methods, like low bid or other? Please share your thoughts and your program's best feature.
So I went back and tried to find some data for safety. I wasn't able to actually come up with any relevant data to see if JOCs are more or less safe than any of the other delivery methods. As far as quality goes, I would expect, or I have an expectation that JOC contractors are a higher quality contractor, right? If they want to be on an on-call and they want, which is basically what this is, and they want to be able to get repeat work, that's where the quality comes in. Sometimes with low bid, you get what you pay for sometimes, right? So in this case, we're willing to pay more to have that higher quality. We've already talked about schedule, that this is the way to go as far as timing goes. And then budget. This may not be the cheapest way to do it, is from a pure dollar value, you know, if you're looking at that, but from the value standpoint, it's a great trade-off, right? When you're basically paying for that schedule acceleration.
As it relates to safety, we do look at safety issues. The quality is definitely there. The schedule, we work to do our best to get projects scheduled on time and get it done. Overall, still, you didn't heard me say over and over again, it's money, our budget, our budget.
Amen. So we try to manage our JOC projects just the way we manage any kind of construction project. We have the same level of scrutiny, quality control, you know, the amount of time we spend, you know, checking on stuff and making sure that the project's being done the same way. Sometimes they're really tiny little jobs, you know, that you may not have quite the full-on effort of a, you know, $10 million construction project, but we try at least. And I think that that's an important thing for owners to do, is to treat them the same, because the day you don't, that's the day something bad's going to happen, especially with safety. We all know that's the most important thing on construction projects.
I think typically JOC is going to be one of the better instruments for safety, performance, diversification issues. What I have noticed, though, is that since over the last 8 years or so, I've been doing a lot more broader spectrum of contracting. I have noticed that in the last 5 years or so, that JOC is not quite meeting the levels of like a design build firm or construction manager at risk, where you're actually taking the opportunity to pay for all those services individually, and that the staffing that a contractor puts onto a particular job site can actually be hindering of whether or not safety or other performance items are actually performed. The biggest struggle we've had with most of our JOC contracts over the last decade or so really boiled down to diversification and supporting the diversification requirements. Now, the flip side of it from the contractor's point of view is there's a lot of diversification public entities that have really piled a whole lot of work on top of the JOC contractors. So at some point, I think that part of all these programs needs to really be kind of ironed out a lot better, so that we can have a lot better have a smoother movement with the overall program at any type of institution.
So D, I agree with everybody. No,
You can't always agree.
But the point Vince brought out, I think, is really important, and that is, my experience has been that frequently JOCs are used for projects that are too big to be JOCs, right? And it's not just that you end up with 80 pages of 25 lines per page in a proposal. It's that you don't have the benefit of a design consultant. You don't have the benefit of an engineering consultant going through charrettes and going through design things and actually helping the people who are going to occupy this space understand what it's going to do and how it's going to be used. So, and JOC isn't designed to do that. JOC is designed to do small to mid-sized multi-trade jobs, but because it's faster and in some sense easier, people use it, I think, out of the proper context. And when it gets out of that context, quality suffers. In other words, the final project isn't what it could have been. And that's a function of many things. And the main one is time. And doing it right sometimes takes time. And sometimes the public isn't willing to give time because they need the school fixed, or they need the wiring done, or whatever it is, right? How much design did you do for that wiring on the tollway? Not that much, right? Because they had to work from what they had. So, you know, could they have made the whole system a little better? If they'd had 6 months to design it and bid it, maybe. But you would have lost billions, right, in revenue. So there's this trade-off, and where quality fits is really interesting. And the other piece is the cost part. There were studies early on, like in the turn of the century. Isn't it funny you can say that now? But back at the turn of the century, there were some studies done that it's hard to realize how old we are, right? So back at the turn of the century, they did some studies and bid out extraordinarily similar jobs and priced them against JOC, and it turned out not to be more expensive. It turned out to actually be cheaper in some instances. So I'm not sure that cost is higher with JOC. I won't accept that as a given fact. I know there are different percentages and different factors and things, but I think they end up there anyway if the job's done right. So yes, I agree with everybody.
Okay. We have one last question, and then we're going to turn it over to the audience to ask questions of the panel members. So how can CJE and the other industry partners in the crowd here help with A, improving your specific JOC program, and B, improving JOC or IDIQ practices in general throughout the industry?
Okay, so from my perspective, the advantage of CJP, the advantage of us is us, right? It's the ability to network, it's the ability to know people who do the same thing or similar things or completely different things, but they call them the same thing. But this idea of community and understanding about what a good program is and how good programs work from both the contractor and the owner perspective. And the fact that we can facilitate a room where owners and contractors can sit together and have conversations about things that work and things that don't work. And that's really important because there are frequently misconceptions about what JOC can do, and it helps to know that you have people you can rely on to give you support or give you opinions about, I had somebody yesterday say, I just want to make sure I'm not completely off base on this. What do you think about this idea? And of course they were exactly right, but the idea that there was a forum where they could ask somebody who they trusted or somebody who has a different experience, how would you fix this, or how would you approach this, or is this approach reasonable in your mind, is really valuable. And if you get too insular, you can't get that kind of validation.
This time I say ditto Mike instead of him saying ditto me. But I think, personally, I believe CJE is a tool of extreme need for the job order contracting industry. The two things that the first thing I do agree with him is the networking. One, the networking is priceless. I have come to many of these seminars now, and I've listened in the background to you all murmuring to each other about, we don't do it this way, we don't do it that way, we don't do it, well, you are able to do this. That is the kind of connectivity that you all need. The other thing that you need to realize with that connectivity is that this is actually a really small group. I mean, if you look at us in comparison to the AGC, we're like a dot out there. So the bigger problem here is that we need the training. And CJE is truly setting that standard for excellence in trying to get a good standardized training module that's out there so that there is a tool for each and every one of your organizations to reach out to and touch. The other side of that is CJE is also active in making sure we're studying the United States and seeing the different locations so that we understand, if you come to us with the Arizona issue, me being from Texas, I don't ever look at the Arizona model. But at the same time, they'll never look at the Texas model. So knowing that there's an organization that stands at a national level that can actually tell you what happens in those different states, that is a strong tool for each and every one of you to use. If you're an owner, that means you have all of the states in the union right now to pull a contract from if you wanted to see a sample. And the CJE website has many different contracts for many different institutions. As for a contractor, boy, if you're starting on one side of the coast and you want to get to the next side of the coast, you can see how to get there by seeing how all the contracts are being performed through this particular organization. And meetings like this actually put you all together so that you can figure out what your plan is for actually growing your operation. So CJE is a necessary function that's been needed for a long time.
With us, of course, since JOC is fairly new in California, it's our contractors are still pretty nervous about bidding on our projects. You know, it's tough for them. I fully recognize why they feel the way they do. So I hope that being involved with this will advertise our program and advertise our opportunities over there, and maybe get a few more folks over there bidding on our jobs, so we get a little more competition. Because at times we've put out contracts that we've gotten 1 or 2 bids, and actually most of the time when we do that, and we end up with the same contractors every time, which in some cases is good, and in one case is bad. No names, but yeah. And I'm fascinated to hear about all the different practices done around the country. I wish that I could use Arizona's model and hire multiple contractors based on qualifications. That would be better for us, but until the laws change, I can't. Anyway, but it's good. Am I saying that too much?
Sounds like we need to meet together.
Yeah, well, good luck there. It's a little different climate over there. But anyway, so that's why I keep involved in this program, and why my organization supports me being involved in this program. So,
For me, it's networking. When we look at both sides of the house, the owners and the contractors, we look at each other because we are a team. Even though we work on different sides, but then we can come together and work and learn from each other. One of the things that I want to say, being from the Midwest, and this is different because we usually get the same contractors, and we welcome and look forward to contractors on the West Coast in this area to bid on our RFP that we are going to be putting out at the beginning or the latter part of this year. And we use the Kansas City, Missouri plan room, and it goes nationally across the United States. And so if you look at that and you decide that you want to submit a proposal for our new JOC program, please do. We want to see what another contractor can do for the city of Kansas City. We want to have a good relationship, and we decide to just have 1 or 2 or 3, we will welcome that. So please think about that. And so it's still, as I said, everything is based upon networking. We want to build a great relationship and learning, and we learn from each other.
So being last in this one, they all stole my answers. Well, I was going to talk about networking and training, right? So CJE is a great tool and a great organization. They've been great with me in the first year that I've been here at the city, of inviting me in and letting me learn about your organization and then letting me tell you about our organization. I think the training part of it is really important. Some of the things that we see on the agency side over and over, and this may be just an Arizona thing. It seems as though contractors are purposefully or unpurposefully unclear about what should be in general conditions and what should be in overhead and what should, so if there's trainings that could be put on about that, right, to make that consistent, that would make my job a lot easier. So when it gets to me, I don't have to draw lines and know this should be in your general conditions, this is part of your overhead, you shouldn't, that kind of stuff. But that's just small little things, and now I'm being petty about that kind of stuff. But and we won't talk about price, because of course one thing that you could all help me do is just get lower prices. And I know maybe price isn't, maybe we don't pay more for JOCs, but if we could just get all of the prices to come down, that'd be great for any of the delivery methods. So any help you guys can help me with that would be fantastic.
Okay, thanks everybody
you.
for answering those questions. We want to turn it over to the audience and see if there's any questions from the audience for our panel members. So the question was, if anybody didn't hear, was is there any sort of formal partnering process that owners have used between owners and contractors.
I could do quickly when we, so in Chicago, in the last century, when we brought JOC to Chicago, the contractors had no idea what we were talking about, to be honest. And so we did do formal partnering when we started the contracts. We did a lot of outreach and a lot of vendor training, I would say, because we had to teach people how to bid it. But we also used a formal partnering process, which was based loosely on the old partnering process that was in Arizona with the Department of Transportation back in the late 80s, early 90s, with third-party facilitators and all that. But yeah, we've done it. But we've done it normally when it's a new program, because once I've got people understanding, I don't necessarily need the expense.
Okay, with the city of Kansas City, when we first started our program, we went out and we had meetings. We had meetings within our governing body. We had meetings with our end users, the managers, directors, because we wanted to get everybody on board. And in order for this to work, we had to start from the top. And then once it starts from the top in-house, you pretty much want to, that you will get your users that will use the program. And then also we did community outreach as well. We had tons and tons of meetings. We wanted to get our subs involved, because here was a program that they thought maybe was going to take away jobs that they probably would not get. But then what they failed to realize is that these was going to be jobs that was going to be created for them, so they can be subs on the contract. And so it really worked out. And so now what we do with our contract that we do have monthly meetings with our contractor. And if there's any issues that is going on with our departments, that they're having issues with the contractor, we meet every month to go over projects, concerns, funding. Is there's problems with our subs, and so you cannot meet enough and try to resolve issues. And we're not just meeting just to be meeting. We are meeting to resolve problems.
Deloitte has presented the situation that I actually call now the new partnership within the JOC program. At the turn of the century, when we were using buggies, rocks, and stones, apparently we were in that. The Corps of Engineer kind of led that whole idea of how to set up partnering. You did use that third-party base, and that worked well for that particular time period. But what I've noticed now is that the partnering actually starts at the moment when the contract is starting to be written, so that the contract is actually being thought of from a contractor's perspective on owner need. Because that document is going to be the base document of the relationship between owner and contractor. The next part of that is once I get ready to advertise my solicitation, I want to take the opportunity to start going out and educating the community and having meetings, having opportunities to train the community. We've done things, set up training for understanding how to build a coefficient. What does it look like to put together a project? What does it look like to put together a JOC proposal? These training sessions begin that relationship with the contractor community, with an owner. And then to try to guarantee that relationship, like Deloitte mentioned, we then turn around and go in and try to educate the teams inside the owner. So those project managers, those other people that are there. And then finally, when we get to the point where we've actually awarded the contract, we like to have the pre-work conference where we sit down with all the contractors, set up the standards and guidelines that we're going to do, and as Deloitte stated, try to have either monthly or quarterly all contractors together at one-time meetings so that they understand that we're here to listen to the issues back and forth.
I have a question for the panel. One of the things we've been talking about is the whole thing. We've been talking about project related. We're not talking about program in so much as we seem to be starting in the middle of your program with the contract. There's also the beginning of what UPB and what software you're going to use. So my question to you is, do you go out and solicit those, the unit price book or the software that has to be used in your program? And if you do not, how do you procure that? Is it just an off-the-shelf thing for you?
Okay, who want to answer that?
So California, yes, we have to go out and procure that. And is there anybody from Gordian here, by the way? Oh, they're here. Okay. Love you guys. Love you guys.
And they're a proud and welcome sponsor.
Yes, they are. Thank you for your sponsorship, definitely. But we don't get any other, we put it out to bid, because we have to put things out to bid, and we get nobody else bidding it. And that's been going on for a while now. There's no competition that at least comes to us. Maybe there are some out there in the industry. I'd love to know about it, by the way.
Okay, in the olden days, yes, there was always a competitive market. Almost every military branch had their own solicitation for unit price books. So we somehow got away from that. It's time to get back to that process again.
So from my perspective, it's an evolving market, right? There was a time when it was a sole source. There was a time when you would put out bids and get nothing, or put out proposals and get nothing. And now there's an exhibit area over there with people who offer options. And there's everything from fully managed programs to somebody helping you develop your own small book, whatever that might be, and everything in between. So at this point, we're at a tipping point, right? This industry is at a place where it's poised to like skyrocket in capability and applicability. And part of that is around the competition that's newly there. So yeah, you've got to watch it. And like you said, it's not unusual that only one group proposes and that's all you've got to work with, right? But now there's other things. So for those of you who sell stuff, pay attention. I mean, Delois was begging contractors to bid, right? Weren't you? That's what I heard, right? That's what we do, right? So come compete.
So Chuck mentioned this, but really any of you can answer the question, which was negotiating estimates. How often are you doing that, and what generally are you looking to accomplish when that process happens?
So yeah, we negotiate all of our JOC contracts. And so I can follow up a little bit with what I said earlier. It's really important for the owner to have good estimating capabilities. Because there's nothing more frustrating for a contractor, and you contractors out there can speak to this, I'm sure, is that you develop an estimate. And by the way, estimating is the most important thing contractors do. If they're bidding too high, they're not getting work. If they bid too low, they lose money and they go out of, so either way, they go out of business. So they've got to know what it's gonna cost from the build stuff, right? And so the most frustrating thing for a contractor, I think, in JOC is for them to build an estimate and come to us and give us that number, and the owner, who doesn't really know what they're doing, goes, oh, that's way too high. And so what's the contractor do at that point, right? They're stuck. They're like, well, no, it's not. So it's really important, I think, to, again, that the owner really knows how to estimate the work themselves. And in our program, we do negotiate every JOC. We do. We give them a scope of work. We tell them, okay, this is what we want you to accomplish. Here's whatever plan the specs we may have. Develop your proposal. They develop their proposal through Gordian. They bring it to us. We look at it. If it's, we develop our own estimate on our own, an independent estimate ahead of time. And then we compare the two, and if they're pretty similar, then we go, good, we're good to go. If they're really off in one way or another, then we sit down and talk about it. So, anybody else want to talk? This end of the table doesn't get the mic.
Oh, damn it! I wonder why. I wonder why that end doesn't get the mic as much as us two grabbing it. Yeah. So from my perspective, the limit of negotiation should be a conversation around whether the quantities with the line items are reasonable and whether they're the right line items. So it's the old, did you use the fence repair line item or the fence install line item? Or did you use the right quantity breakdown line item? Or did you say there's 1 million square feet of drywall when there's only 10,000, right? So that it's not a negotiation around, or shouldn't be a negotiation around, your price is too high, how do we lower it? It should be a conversation around, is it the right, did you use the book right? Did you pick the right line items? And do the quantities make sense? So I don't even want to say it's a negotiation, it's a discussion. Because you want to arrive at the right place. It's not like there shouldn't be two positions about how much drywall there needs to be. there should be an answer. It's a physical reality, right? And so that should be there. And now he's going to go the other way, but that's okay.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. I am going to go the other way on this. The catch here, owners, I want to let you in on a secret. All the owners, are you listening right now? The contractor is always negotiating. There's not 1 minute when they're not. So if you're sitting here as an owner and you think that you can do a contract and forget option with JOC, you need to turn your mindset a little bit around. I've constantly had to train my teams to understand that that's what it is. It is a negotiation. We need the work. We need the contractor to be in there. We need to come to an agreement of fair and reasonable every time we negotiate. So every contract I've ever done on every day and every hour that I've ever worked, I'm always in a negotiation mode. You can ask some of the contractors who've worked on my contracts. They'll tell you that every time they phone call me, I probably have a counter phone call for them. So, but definitely a necessary part of the industry.
And yes, it is. It's discussion and negotiating. Each line item that we have had where some of the line items were incorrect based upon the cost, the unit, and I don't know who was wrong, is that this is what printed out. But the department was very upset because this is not what they really wanted, but then when you walk the job, this is what you got. But there's always discussions, and then sometimes it leads to negotiating, and then sometimes it leads to other things where people just you can't reach a decision. They just get up and just walk out the room and then decide, well, I'm going to do it another way, so, and we don't want to get there. We don't want to be there at all.
This is a three-part question. First, it seems like all of you made up your own RFP in whatever JOC contract you had. Why did you use your own versus a cooperative type contract? The second part is, what were the disadvantages that you saw with not using a cooperative contract? And third is, would you look at using a cooperative contract in the future?
Okay, who wants to take that one first?
Keep it that in for a minute.
Yeah, keep it down here for a minute. By the way, you guys have been doing a good job down there. Keep it up. So I think I can answer your question, all three of the questions, with one answer. Is the city of Phoenix does use a cooperative, we've used our own, we have our own, but we have language in the contract that then allows other agencies to use ours. ADOT, ADOA, all the state agencies have similar language in there. For example, we just went into a cooperative agreement with the state to use them for their fire panels and fire alarm systems. They had a JOC. We had an immediate need and we didn't have a contractor, or we didn't have that JOC available. So we just latched on to one that was already through ADOA. So Arizona, I don't know about down there, but Arizona has that ability already built in.
For us, we looked at it before we decided to do our own. We met with companies and we just said, well, we'll test it first by piggybacking off another contract that was already in place. I believe it was the University of Missouri. And after we tested it, we decided we're going to do our own. We did have a desire to use a co-op at one time, but we decided just to do our own. And would we use one? I don't know. It's questionable.
I'd just say that our organization was originally started by a bunch of Caltrans people. So our whole contract model and specifications, everything is based on Caltrans model. And so that's what we use until they change it. which would take a massive organizational shift. We're stuck with that. So.
Change California law?
No, not this time.
Kind of simple with Texas. It boils down to economics and transparency. Most municipalities, as well as higher education in Texas, are required to have a level of transparency and be able to use their own contract. There's not a way to actually blend those two things together quite well. The other part of it is that when there's a comparative price to a large entity like an Austin, San Antonio, or something of that nature, the dollars are better spent on supporting its own contract. Now, where I found that the co-ops are really spectacular at, rural communities. Because I'll tell you, there's no staffs out there. There's no help out there. They really can use the co-ops out there, and they need that help desperately.
And that's another place where Virginia has challenges because it is specifically prohibited, at least many lawyers will tell you this, to use a cooperative for construction in Virginia. It's the law. So that's where you're stuck, and so those small communities don't get the benefit. But you can do a joint bid, but you can't do a cooperative.
I provided partnering services in my first JOC in 1991, and I've done several dozen since. The first thing I do is talk with people. I want to hear what's going on. What are your issues? What are your problems? How are the relationships? And one of the most common things I hear from owner organizations is, oh, the contractor's coefficient is too low. Would you speak to that? How you feel about it? It's a perception. It's not a fact. And I just wonder, what is the atmosphere if you experience something like that, or have you experienced it? Or it's just a common thing I've heard.
So yeah, since we use coefficients or adjustment factors, what we call them, a too low one is a red flag. That means the contractor expects to be able to get money back in another fashion, right? And I don't know if there's anybody from the city of Long Beach around, but the city of Long Beach had a big problem with contractors bidding really low adjustment factors, and then there wasn't enough oversight of the projects, and the contractors were getting quite big change orders. And so to me, yeah, that's a big thing. So yeah, if it's too low, we want the contractors to be successful, so they're sticking around. That means they have to make a bit of a profit. You know, they have to make some profit, not too much, but you know. So.
One, I think it's good for, in a solicitation, from the owner's perspective, wait a minute, did you have an answer? Oh, okay. From the owner's perspective, it actually helps the contractors if you actually establish what would be a low, and not allow contractors to try to cut to a low. I've actually found myself in positions prior to awards of actually making phone calls and trying to clear up what would be a best offer, as well as making sure I clarify that the particular numbers that were given had all those parts into it. The other part I wanted to cover, though, with your question had to do with the partnering and how it's some of the things, the dynamic that's changed there. One of the things I've noticed is that contractors don't visit the contracting offices much anymore. And I think a lot of that is because of technology. They don't have to drive down and visit with you or something like that. But I'll tell you, that is a real missing piece of the puzzle if you can't just literally every now and then have a face-to-face and sit down and talk about issues. And I'll tell you, the next generation is probably going to be a little bit worse at it, only because this texting thing is really kind of contagious. So.
See, he assumed I had something to say there. No.
But you do.
So yeah, there have been a couple of times where I've been in a circumstance where it was a bid coefficient and the bid coefficient was low, and we've actually had to have conversations prior to award to make sure that there was an understanding about what was included in overhead and basically those bids were withdrawn once there was a full understanding of what was expected, and that translated into a need to educate the contractors more. And that's how we followed up with the next solicitation with more outreach, more training, more process. In a world where you have to bid construction, you kind of have to use the low coefficient, then you're stuck, so you have this, you find them non-responsive or let them withdraw. is your only choice. If you can negotiate, then it becomes part of the negotiation.
Okay, I think we finished right on time. Can we have a round of applause for our panel?